Tomorrow, 7 GOP hopefuls will be on stage for the second Republican debate at the Reagan Presidential Library in Simi Valley, California. Former Vice President Mike Pence will be there, and he is kind enough to join us now. Vice President, thank you so much for your time.
You bet, Linsey. Good to be with you.
A new poll out today from Monmouth University asked voters who they'd like to see as the Republican nominee for president in 2024. Only 1% chose you. In our polling averages, your numbers have stayed flat since the last debate. What do you plan on doing differently tomorrow night?
Well, we're just going to continue to work hard, and we're going to continue to present my message that after 4 years as vice president, 4 years as a governor of a conservative state, 12 years in the Congress of the United States where I led House conservatives, that I'm simply the most qualified, the most consistent conservative in this race. And I have to tell you, Linsey, I think it's real early. You know, we've been spending a fair amount of time in New Hampshire and in Iowa, and I ran into a wonderful woman just the other day. She walked up to me and she said, you know, it's good to see you again. I'm still undecided. I've only met you 3 times. And you know, these early states, they take their time. We're going to go out there and earn it. And but I still believe that the majority of Republicans want us to stay on that time-honored, tested, mainstream conservative agenda that really has defined our party since Ronald Reagan came to the White House in January of 1981. People will hear me last night reflecting on how Ronald Reagan drew me to the Republican Party. That's the message that we're continuing to deliver, not only on the airwaves, on the debate stage, but all across Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and all across the country.
Does former President Trump owe it to voters to be on that stage tomorrow?
Well, I think he owes it to voters to answer the tough questions and to share his vision for where we lead this country out of the failed policies of the Biden administration. Look, we had the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. We have the worst border crisis in history. Inflation is ravaging the family budgets of millions of Americans. And I think one thing that I've tried to make clear to people is when Donald Trump ran in 2016, Linsey, he promised to govern as a conservative, and we did govern as conservatives all those 4 years. But Donald Trump makes no such promise today. I mean, where we stood for strong American leadership in the world, he and some of his imitators are sounding the words of isolation and appeasement as war rages in Eastern Europe. Where we cut taxes across the board under our administration, Donald Trump now advocates what would be one of the largest tax increases in history, a 10% tariff on all imports into the country. And where we stood without apology for the right to life, Donald Trump now has taken to criticizing states that advance protections for the unborn at the point at which an unborn child can experience pain. So I think the Donald Trump today is different than the Donald Trump of 2016. And you bet, I think he ought to be on that debate stage. He ought to be engaging all of us that are vying for this nomination. He ought to be sharing his vision. But for my part, I'm going to continue to share a vision of a tested, proven conservative that knows those same ideas, those ideas we governed on, those ideas that Ronald Reagan brought forward and brought America back in the 1980s. They're the ideas that are going to bring America back today.
We just learned today a New York judge has ruled former President Trump committed systemic fraud, lying for years about his net worth by inflating the value of his real estate portfolio. Is this a fair issue for you to bring up on the campaign trail?
Well, I'm not familiar with the judge's ruling, but I think judgments about the president, can be made by any American. But at the end of the day, I have to tell you, I just don't hear very much about any of the legal controversies swirling around the president. I do hear people very concerned about the future of this country, about inflation, about Joe Biden's war on energy, about a crisis at the border that's seen more than 6 million people come into this country in the last 2.5 years. And now even you have places like New York City that are waking up to the crisis at our border. So, look, anybody on that stage can bring up any issues they want. I'm going to be focused on the issues the American people are focused on, and the fact that I'm committed to bringing those conservative solutions that have defined our party over the last 50 years to bear on it, while Donald Trump and others are following a siren song of populism and want to lead our party to a whole different range of policies that I think will ill serve the nation as we try and find our way out of the failures of the Biden administration.
One of those issues, obviously, as you know, former President Trump has called abortion bans at 6 weeks, like the one in Florida, quote, terrible mistake. Do you think former President Trump still represents the GOP base's values on abortion?
Well, it's part of what I mentioned earlier, Lindsey. It is, I'm pro-life. I don't apologize for it. I couldn't be more proud to have played a role in the administration that appointed 3 of the justices that sent Roe versus Wade to the ash heap of history and returned the question of abortion to the states and the American people. But for Donald Trump to describe a positive pro-life bill, a heartbeat bill that not only passed in Florida but in Georgia and in Ohio, in Iowa, to describe that as a terrible mistake, I think is a real betrayal and a disservice to millions of pro-life Americans who have longed to advance the sanctity of life. I want people to know if I'm president of the United States, they're going to have a champion for the right to life in the Oval Office, and I'll always honor all of those that are protecting the unborn in our nation.
Today, President Biden, as you know, took the unprecedented step of joining a union picket line. Do you think that that's appropriate for a president to do so?
Well, look, it's free country. Joe Biden can go to the picket line and grab a bullhorn and talk about his support for members of the UAW. But I got to tell you, I come from the second leading manufacturing state in the country. I know an awful lot about the automotive business. We're proud of it in the state of Indiana, Lindsey. And look, I think what's putting those people on the picket line is not the class warfare politics you're hearing about. I think it's that Bidenomics has failed. Wages are not keeping up with inflation, and auto workers know it just like all American workers. And frankly, they also know that those electric vehicle mandates and subsidies of the Biden administration in the Green New Deal really threaten to crush the entire gasoline-powered automotive industry in this country. And so my hope was, I heard he didn't stick around very long on the picket line, and maybe there was a reason for that. I figured if he started talking to some of those UAW members, they might have pulled him aside when the cameras weren't rolling and saying, "Hey, can we come off the accelerator on this aggressive electric vehicle agenda that's good for Beijing, but it's bad for Detroit?" And I really do believe that that's the issue that's driving that strike. And if I'm president, well, we're gonna go back to an all of the above energy strategy. We're gonna be source neutral on energy. We're gonna get rid of this Green New Deal and their subsidies and mandates. And I've got a plan to tackle inflation that'll get wages back up and above inflation in a short period of time.
Just have about a minute left, Mr. Vice President. As you know, in her new book, Enough, former White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson claims former President Donald Trump repeated the Hang Mike Pence chant along with rioters as he was watching the January 6th Capitol insurrection. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I wasn't there. I have no idea what was happening at the West Wing. I stayed at my post that day. I really do believe by God's grace I did my duty that day and kept my oath to the Constitution of the United States. And I must tell you that whatever happened down at the White House, I know that what we did that day, what law enforcement did, quelling that riot and making it possible for us to reconvene the Congress the very same day and complete our work under the Constitution of the United States. It took a day of tragedy and made it a triumph of freedom, and I'll never see it any other way.
If I can just get a yes or no in the limited time that we have, yes or no to the government shutdown. Do you think that it's something that's avoidable?
Well, we went through the longest government shutdown in history when we were in office, and I was the lead negotiator for the administration. Look, spending is out of control in Washington, D.C. I commend House Republicans for digging in. But I think at the end of the day, we've got to have leadership in the White House and in the Congress that deals with the real drivers of our national debt. We have $33 trillion national debt, and entitlements are driving that. If I'm president of the United States, we'll find a way to fund the government and find savings on the margins. But we're going to take on common sense reforms for entitlements to save our children and grandchildren from a mountain range of debt.
Former Vice President Mike Pence, always appreciate you coming on. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Lindsey. Good to be with you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.